We are back, you guys, for our third and final round of freezer meals. Hey guys, Kira here from 50 Shades of Mom, tips for all shades of mom life, and I am back in today's video for our third and final round of freezer meals, and this time it's for the pressure cooker. So I'll make sure to link our first two rounds of videos in the description box below. The first one was oven freezer meals, then we went to crock pot meals, and like I said, we're concluding now with pressure cooker meals. And it's not a me, I say we, because this video is in collab with my really good YouTube friend Vanessa from Lemonademom. And she's not just any type of YouTube friend like some of these other amazing ladies I've met here on YouTube that I've got a chance to communicate and text and write with outside of YouTube. Vanessa became a real life friend. We started off and met on YouTube, but we lived quite a distance away from one another, and about 6 months ago I relocated to her area, so now we can become real life friends. So we get an opportunity to go out and shop together and have lunch. Our kids play together, well, at least when we're not on lockdown and on quarantine. I love her. I love spending time with her. I love hanging out with her, and I know that you guys will love her too. She has very similar mom content, just like me. She's a boss in the kitchen. She does Dollar Trees and clean with me, so I'll leave all of her information on the end slate of this video and in the description box. Make sure to leave her a little unicorn emoji in the comments so she knows that I sent you. And I have 3 recipes to share with you guys today, and Vanessa has 3 recipes as well. So let's go down to the kitchen counter and I'll show you what I cooked up in my pressure cooker for dinner this week. So for our first recipe, we are making pizza pasta in our pressure cooker. And our pressure cooker is off to the side because we don't need that part just yet. We have a few steps that we need to accomplish before we get to that pressure cooker point. So for this recipe, we're going to need some diced up garlic. It did call for 3 to 4 cloves, but of course I'm Italian and I always kind of overdo it. So I did 5 cloves for each recipe. And then over here I have some pepperoni. We're going to be putting some pepperoni inside and on top, and we need about 20 pieces for each recipe. We're going to use some butter to saute our ground sausage in, and then here's my own homemade sauce. This is not measured. We need 28 ounces for each, so we're going to measure that out once we do the recipe. I have some shredded mozzarella back there, 1 cup that we need for the first recipe that we're going to have for dinner tonight, and then that mozzarella was in the freezer frozen, so it's defrosting for me right now, and we're going to shred that up for the meal that we're putting into the freezer. I have a can of paste here. We're going to use half for each recipe, some salt, some Italian seasoning. We're also going to add in some cracked black pepper, and then in each one of these packages is 1 pound of ground sausage. I just use the Jimmy Dean kind. And then here is my freezer bag and my nifty little freezer bag holder. Ignore what you see there. I wrote the wrong directions. You'll see a label on top of it in just a little bit. And then 2 pounds of pasta, 1 pound for each recipe, and then that is it. Now don't kill me, you guys. I know you guys usually hate the double steps when it comes to a freezer meal, but we're going to saute our ground beef first. So I have a cassourie. It's not exactly an instant pot, but it's still a pressure cooker, same scenario, and it has similar buttons on it, and it does have a saute or brown function. So that's what we're going to do with our ground sausage first. I just said beef before, right? I did not mean beef. I meant ground sausage. I guess you could use beef in this recipe. This is one that I found on Pinterest, so I'll make sure to link the recipe down below, but this particular recipe called for sausage, but I'm sure you could use beef if you'd like. I actually had sausage in my sauce, so I probably should have used beef just to offset the flavors, but needless to say, it was still super delicious. So once our butter melts down, we're going to add in 1 teaspoon of Italian seasoning. We're going to add in the portion of garlic meant for this recipe, and then we're going to salt and pepper, and once that gets a really good smell, it smelled amazing, then we're just going to add in our ground sausage. Just going to break it up and get it as ground as possible, and then once that's all brown, then we're going to add in the rest of the ingredients. Now our sausage is all ground, and so we're going to add in the sauce. And I actually used a ball jar. A ball jar has about 24 ounces labeled, and then up to the very top is exactly 28 ounces. So I filled a ball jar with my sauce so I can get my exact 28 ounces. Then I added in half of that can of paste. We're gonna give it a good stir. We're gonna add that whole bag of pasta right on top, and then we're going to add in another 28 ounces of water, and then we're gonna put the lid on, and we're gonna put it on manual high pressure for only 5 minutes, you guys. So once we have reached 0 on the clock, it came to pressure, it did its 5 minutes. I did a quick release and let all of the pressure out of this little top, and keep in mind this little bugger, he becomes a problem in our next recipe. And then I took the lid off, and let me tell you guys the smell that was in the air. It smelled so good. And I gave it another quick stir, and let me tell you guys, at first I thought the noodles weren't done and I gave them a try. But I feel like when it cooks in the pressure cooker, it doesn't swell like it does in the boiling water. So it was more dense, which just happens to be the way that I like my pasta. I like it more on the al dente side, and it was still cooked all the way through. I just feel like it was definitely not as absorbed with water like when you boil it. Now the instructions say we're going to add in half of our pepperoni, and I diced up 10 slices, and then half of our cheese. So a half a cup of cheese and a half a cup of those pepperoni slices. You probably could have done more pepperoni and more cheese. I should have thought about that. I was just trying to do the right thing and follow the recipe, but that's why you tweak things and see what works for your family. And then the rest you top on top. So we're going to add the next half a cup of cheese onto the top of the pasta, and then we're going to add the rest of our pepperoni, which is another 10 slices chopped up. Now, because this is pizza pasta, you guys literally could add anything that you want to this. If you wanted to do more of a supreme and add in some peppers and black olives, if you wanted to do different kinds of meats, add a little crumbled bacon or something like that on top, you really could be creative, as it is pizza, and kind of design it however it is that you want. But once you get your toppings on, we're just going to stick the lid back on, and we're just going to let the heat from the pan sit for a little while and just let it melt all that cheese and just get everything gooey like you would want pizza to be. And so once it's all done and you open the lid, everything was all melty and yummy, and I just dished it out to everybody like that, and everybody was absolutely over the moon about how good this was. Again, Mason had said, "Oh, mommy, we could have added mushrooms," and I personally like all sorts of things. I was thinking about olives and peppers and all these different things that we could have done with the pasta. But we all sat down to eat, and you'll see my finished plate in just a minute. But as soon as we were done eating, then I went ahead and took the remaining leftovers out of the pan, stuck it in a Tupperware, and threw it in the refrigerator. And then we went and repeated all of the same steps. So we threw in our butter, our garlic, our Italian seasoning, our salt and pepper, and then we added in our ground sausage, and we're going to ground that up, and then we'll add in again the rest of our ingredients. So that means our tomato sauce, we're going to add in our tomato paste, we're going to add in that water, but we're not going to add in the pasta. That you're going to save for when you cook this the next time. Pretty much right now we're just making a glorified tomato sauce, meat sauce, and preparing it for the next step. And then you're just going to pour it in just like this into your freezer bag, and we're going to freeze the freezer bag just this way, and you're going to make sure to thaw this thoroughly before you put it in the pressure cooker the next time. And then I just thought about having the idea of attaching the rest of the ingredients that we're going to need to complete the recipe right to the bag, so we don't have to worry about having those things on hand when we go to cook the recipe next time. So I put our pepperoni in a bag with a little note that says add half of me inside and add half of me on top. And I went ahead and shredded that mozzarella and did the same thing with it and added a little post-it note, and then I just taped them to the top of that bag. Now remember, do not stick that pasta in the freezer. I did test that out and do my research, and it said there's no need for you to freeze the pasta. It's actually not good to do that if it's uncooked. And I didn't want to dump the pasta into the bag because I figured it'll just get soggy between before it freezes and when it thaws. So your pasta is going to be the only thing you're going to have to remember to have on hand. Otherwise, the rest of your items will be attached right to the bag. And here's how I ended up serving it for my family. I had mine with a glass of the Stella Rosa Red that I'm absolutely obsessed with. It just felt like it would go perfectly with that. I made little garlic toast and we had some salad with homemade croutons, and it really was so delicious, topped with a little bit of Parm cheese. It was the perfect pasta dinner. And now we are on to our next recipe, you guys, and this is a buffalo ranch chicken. This is also not my recipe. It's another recipe that I found on Pinterest, and so I'll make sure to link that one below for you guys as well. But I will say that this recipe ended up being a little bit tricky going along, not the recipe itself, but I had a problem with my pressure cooker while I was cooking this recipe. But right now I have two separate prepackaged thing of chicken thighs. There's about 6 to 7 pieces in each package. I have some butter here that we're going to need to go with some hot sauce, your choice. I'm using Frank's Red Hot, and some powdered ranch seasoning mix, and it's just makes such a wonderful sauce. And then carrots and celery, which just perfectly reminds me of wings, exactly how it would be served at a restaurant with some carrot sticks and celery. And then I have my bag over there with my bag holder. But our first step is actually going to be to braise the chicken thighs. This is not a suggestion within the recipe, but this is just my own personal suggestion. I like to use some olive oil, and I like to give my chicken a good crisp on the side before I put it in the pressure cooker or the crock pot. It just really locks in the flavor, and it gives a nice texture to the outside while still making it fully cooked throughout. So that's just my own little thing. You can skip and avoid this step if you would like, but I like to get a screaming hot pan with the olive oil and just do about 2 to 3 minutes on each side, which I think is perfect because this recipe called for 15 to 20 minutes on manual pressure. 5 minutes is a very big difference between time frames. We just cooked that last meal in 5 minutes. So the fact that it said 15 to 20, I didn't really like that large gap of time. And I went with the smaller portion because we actually put this in a pan and it started to cook on both sides. So I felt like staying on the lesser end would make more sense as far as time frame is concerned. So once I got all these in the pan, I gave them a good salt and pepper. Again, only 2 to 3 minutes on each side. I flip them over and then I salt and pepper the other side, and once they have a good crisp, then I just remove them from the heat. Now, once that first batch was done, I went ahead and took the insert out of the pressure cooker and I transferred all of the chicken into that pressure cooker pot. And then while we still had a really good temperature on that pan with that oil really cranking, I went ahead and got started on our next batch of chicken. So we just need to do the exact same thing. This pot was big enough to fit all of our chicken thighs in one batch on one go around. So I made sure to just load it back up. I salt and peppered that and I let that do its thing, and then we're going to go back and work on the chicken that is waiting for us in the pressure cooker. And we're pretty much just going to layer the rest of the ingredients. So you're going to sprinkle around your pieces of celery and your carrots. Then we're going to add in 1 cup of your favorite hot sauce, 1 ounce of that powdered ranch mix, which is equivalent to 2 teaspoons, and then 4 tablespoons of butter. I just did 4 1 tablespoon pads and scattered it along the top. And then we're going to close the lid. Now, again, I told you guys that it said 15 minutes on manual pressure. Now you can see me playing with this little pressure gauge right here. I just could tell that it wasn't catching. It had given me a problem with the first recipe before, but I held it for that 5 minutes. You guys didn't see me, but that 5 minutes that pizza pasta was cooking, I was holding the pressure nozzle so that it didn't come apart. But for whatever reason, this had such a difficult time coming to pressure because a little piece on the inside broke. So I was really lucky for my husband. He was able to take the top apart and glue the little piece so I could go ahead and finish the recipe, but this really turned into a nightmare. So while that was trying to come to pressure, I just went ahead and packed the other freezer bag, which pretty much was a dump and go. I did make sure to wait for that chicken to be cool. You didn't want to put piping hot chicken into the freezer bag, but I did the same thing. I added the celery and carrots, the hot sauce, the ranch seasoning mix, and the butter, and then mixed it all up and got it ready to go. But I wasn't really sure what was going to happen with this recipe, you guys. I didn't get a chance to show you me letting the pressure out and show you what the chicken looks like when I first opened the lid, and I don't even know the real amount of sauce that it would make because it never really came to pressure. No matter how much I sat there and held it, it tried for like 20 to 30 minutes to come to pressure, and it just could not do it because it kept releasing the air out of that nozzle. So in that amount of time, the chicken did cook all the way through, but it almost burned on the bottom. There was like a cake of black. I wasn't even sure if the chicken was going to be salvageable. I called Vanessa. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to finish this freezer meal series with you because I think my pressure cooker's broken and nothing is working for me. But like I said, my husband was able to take it apart and notice that there was a piece broken off the pin. So he did glue it, and I did notice that for my next recipe it did stay. But the only reason why this cooked was because it tried to come to pressure for so long. So I'm not even actually sure what the actual recipe would look like when you first take the lid off. I don't know if there's a bunch of sauce. Like I said, there was nothing left in my pan, and it even started to burn on the bottom because it tried so hard. But the chicken itself still did come out super tender. So by us doing what we did in the pan really did a number on it, thank goodness, because I don't know if it would have cooked if we didn't do that step. But it was so delicious. I love me some buffalo, you guys, and I love blue cheese dressing. This is the homemade blue cheese dressing that I just made in my last meal prep video. It's that Keto Ladies blue cheese dressing, and how perfect is blue cheese with buffalo anything? So we had our little carrots and our celery, which were tender but still super spicy from that buffalo sauce, and then I had my homemade blue cheese dressing, which was just a perfect top to this chicken. I love the way chicken thighs cook up in the crock pot or the pressure cooker. They just fall apart. And these are these seasoned crinkle fries from Great Value. Love that brand. And I had my little homemade ranch on the side, those seasoned fries with the ranch dressing, and the buffalo chicken with the blue cheese and the carrots and the celery. If your mouth isn't salivating, it should be, because that was so good. Last, a recipe, you guys, and this one is one that I came up with on my own. I was struggling a little bit with finding pressure cooker recipes that I wanted to share with you guys. I wanted to be able to give you a separate variety from Vanessa, and so I decided to do a pineapple barbecue meatball. I love doing meatballs, and my family loves any kind of barbecue sauce, and as soon as the weather breaks, I usually start to feel like that pineapple watermelon flavor. So in that bucket is 2.5 pounds of ground beef that we're going to make into meatballs and separate between each one. We're going to need some milk, 2 eggs. I have some minced onion, some minced garlic, some soy sauce, and then some breadcrumbs. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to make the meatball portion of this first. So in the cookbook that I wrote with Vanessa and Nicole, I share with you guys my meatball recipe, which I actually took out my cookbook and looked at my traditional meatball recipe and tweaked it so that I can give it more of an Asian feel. The only thing I was missing was some ginger. I really wished that I had ginger, but I put the 2 eggs in there, and then my recipe calls for 3/4 cup milk. I did a 1/2 cup of milk and then a 1/4 cup of soy sauce, and then I usually just do powdered onion and garlic in my regular meatballs, but I did 3 teaspoons of the chopped garlic and then 3 teaspoons of the minced onion. I gave a good salt and peppering, probably 2 teaspoons of salt. And I don't know how long on the pepper. It's that fresh cracked black pepper. So I just went and did as much as I could. You can pepper to your liking. We like a lot of pepper in this house, or at least I like to sneak in a lot of pepper because I happen to like it. And then we're going to do 1 cup of the breadcrumbs. Now you can play with the breadcrumbs for the consistency that you like. My recipe in the cookbook called for 3/4 cup of breadcrumbs, but that was for only 1.5 pounds of ground beef. So being that we had another pound in there, I only wanted to try just going up in 1/4 cup increments, but this ended up working out perfectly. So once I gave it a good mix, we're going to start preparing and rolling up our little meatballs. Now I'm going to show you guys here exactly the amount of meat that you're going to roll between your fingertips and make into a meatball. So roughly around the size of a munchkin from Dunkin' Donuts or a donut hole. You really don't want to go any bigger than that. Anything bigger than that is going to give you that mentality of like a bigger meatball, something you would serve alongside your pasta. But when you're doing something like a teriyaki meatball or Swedish meatball, you want to go a little bit more on the smaller side. And for the purposes of cooking inside of the pressure cooker, you also want to make sure this is cooked all the way through. It is a ground beef. It wouldn't be the end of the world if it wasn't cooked completely through. I know that I typically like my red meat still mooing, but for all intents purposes, we still want to make sure that it's cooked. So once I was done rolling all of my little meatballs, I put them back in the Tupperware and I ended up with 36 of them. So that was 18 per recipe, which I honestly think is perfect. So now that our meatballs are done, we're going to start preparing our sauce. So we have our 36 round little meatballs there, and then we have all the things that we're going to need to make our sauce. So I have pineapple juice, some grape jelly, some honey Dijon mustard, and some ketchup, which you can change any of those things to sugar-free or whatever suits your taste and liking the best. And then on here, I have about a cup of pineapple and a cup of red onion for each recipe. So now we're going to start by making our sauce. So we need 1 cup of ketchup, and again, you can use the Hughes sugar-free. You can use whatever kind of ketchup that you like. This is the ketchup that I got from a Costco. And then we're going to do a 1/2 cup of honey Dijon mustard. This just happens to be what I have on hand. You can use any kind of brown mustard or spicy mustard. I wouldn't recommend a yellow mustard for this though. And then you can do your jelly for another 1/2 cup. I wouldn't switch your jelly. I would make sure to stay with grape. I wouldn't really use strawberry or anything like that, but you can use a sugar-free jelly or whatever jelly that you have on hand would suffice. And now that we have our mixture all set up in the measuring cup, we're just going to go ahead and pour that into the pressure cooker. And then we're going to add 1/2 of our pineapple juice. So we need 1 cup of pineapple juice for each recipe, but we're going to start off first by adding just a 1/2 cup into that mixture that we made and giving that a good stir. And then we're going to go ahead and add in our meatballs. You pretty much want your meatballs to be laying on top of that mixture that we made. Then we're going to go ahead and add that pineapple and red onion, and then we're going to pour the remainder of the 1/2 cup of pineapple juice on top, and then we'll close the lid. And now this is the instructions I actually had written on the bag the first time that I had mixed up in my head. The only thing I looked up on Pinterest was other meatball recipes cooked inside of the pressure cooker so that I had an idea how long to cook them on the inside. And so they basically said high manual pressure for 7 minutes, and then to let it slow release for 5 minutes, and then do a quick release and let the rest of the pressure out. So while that is doing its thing, and my fingers were crossed that my pressure cooker was going to come to pressure this time, we went ahead and got everything together. So I literally set my bag up just the way that we did the pressure cooker. I put our mixture into the bag. I added a 1/2 cup of pineapple juice first, gave everything a mix, and then I threw our meatballs on top, threw our pineapple and onion on top of that, threw the rest of the remainder of the pineapple juice on top of it, gave everything a good stir with my hands as I sealed the bag, and then that one was ready to go. Now, once it finally did come to pressure, and this did take a little bit longer than I had anticipated, so I can tell that I need to write Kasori. I don't know how much longer my husband's solution is going to hold up, but at least it did for this recipe. I let all of the pressure out, and then inside was our glorious meatballs. It smelled so pineapple-y, if that's even a word, and fresh and sweet and barbecue-ish, and I knew that we were all going to absolutely love this recipe, which we absolutely did. Everybody cleaned their plates. It was so delicious. I just made it with some brown rice that I just salted and added some butter and fluffed it all up, put it on the bottom of the bowl, and then added some of those meatballs and that barbecue gravy and made it with broccoli, and it really just was so yummy, and it gave us all of the summer feels. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to go over and check out Vanessa and leave her that unicorn emoji so she knows that I sent it to you guys. If you guys are new here, thanks so much for stopping over. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you don't miss any future uploads from me. I have lots of good videos coming up for you guys this week. I hope you guys are all staying safe and healthy through these crazy times. I love you guys all so much, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.